Hello, welcome to Backstory with Joan Goldstein. I'm Joan Goldstein. My guest today is a wonderfully interesting person. She's a writer, she's a teacher, she is a thinker, and we're going to talk about a book that she's recently written and published. And it's an amazingly interesting book. It's called Essie Rose's Revelation Summer. And my writer is Deanie Yasner. And Deanie, what is this book that you wrote? What is it about? What did you want to produce?
Well, I know that this book was mine and mine alone to tell. I'm a late bloomer, so it took me many decades to actually get the story out from inside of me. But I wanted to write a book about my experience being the lone Jewish child in the South during the Jim Crow era. And it was an environment for me that I totally did not understand. And I wanted to find a creative way to make sense out of it. And I also wanted to write a book that would honor my very best friend, who was my family housekeeper. She was the one who nurtured my soul and I think in a way made me who I am today in so many spiritual ways.
And her name was Pearlie Mae Gibbs.
Right, that was the name she was given in the book.
In the book.
In the book, yes. I did have a real Pearlie Mae.
You had a real Pearlie Mae. And what is so interesting about the book is that the era that you're in at the time and what's going on.
Well, it was a very tough era for me. I think it was a very difficult time in the history of this country. It was the Jim Crow era, pre-Civil War times. Civil rights, a lot of tension, being is that we were the only Jewish family in town. It was very alienating for me. My parents had a store on the wrong side of the track, so to speak, because his store catered to the African-American population. But there was still, even though the civil rights movement hadn't officially begun, there was still a lot of tension. The Ku Klux Klan had come to the area. We knew it was there. So it was a difficult time growing up, feeling like there was nobody to understand me or to validate me or to support me.
Mm-hmm. And the book has been out for a little while, and people, you wrote it initially for the middle school age student?
Correct.
Because your main character, Essie Rose, is just turning 11 years old in the book.
Correct.
It's a very important time in her life.
Right.
But what's happened as a result is that people of all ages are reading the book.
Right. That has been an absolute amazement for both myself and my publisher, because technically it is a middle grade novel, but now we're saying it's a novel for people 8 to 80 and beyond, because I've had people 80 and beyond read it 5, 6, and 7 times. So that has been such a wonderful surprise. And I think that's because it speaks to all ages. I think the themes are so universal, it just speaks to the young, the old, and the in-between.
Yes, and you say it's very relevant to today's world. And what it does is, you said, it evokes emotion. It makes people cry.
Right. I had one person that actually reviewed my book, and her review is on the back of the book, and it says, I'll read it, it says, "An absolute delight. I laughed, I cried, I loved it." And I think it does evoke emotion, and I think it just gets to people's hearts and minds, because the characters are very strong characters in the book.
Yes, you have, besides Pearlie Mae Gibbs, you have a young man named Moses Brownridge.
Correct.
Tell us about Moses.
Well, Moses, when Essie Rose had, Pearlie Mae had a favorite song. It was Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. She sang it when she worked. She sang it when she hung the clothes up. And if for people who haven't read the book, when Pearlie Mae disappeared, Essie Rose was walking down a street and she heard the song. And she said, I have to meet the person who was singing Pearlie Mae's song. So that's how Moses got himself into the book.
Wonderful. And they become friends and they read books together. And
Yes.
she reaches out to befriend people that others are shunning for no other reason than for their skin color.
Correct.
Their race, yes. You know, when I saw the book, I think I told you this, I made a connection there that was very close to yours. When I was around 11 or 12, my father moved us to the South, and it was also pre-civil rights, and he opened up a store. And I had to deal with the things that I didn't understand, like riding on buses and
Right.
things I was supposed to not talk to people. I was supposed to not look at people, and I didn't understand what this was all about.
Right. There were very rigid rules of conduct.
Yes,
in that era.
Right.
And very severe consequences.
Right.
For breaking those rules.
That's correct. And like your father, my father had to give up his business because it wouldn't succeed. He had too many prejudice against him. And we finally went back on a train. The four of us, my brother, me, and my mother and father, we went back on a train back to New York and started all over again. And I go back to my old school, and the teacher said something to me, and I flew back into my Southern connection, and I said, yes, ma'am.
Yes,
and the teacher said, what did you say? So suddenly I was breaking the rules of the North.
But so I think in some ways, Joan, our stories are similar.
Yes, they are. And that's why we saw the connection to each other. But it's interesting because what does it do for young people? What is the novel, you think? You're getting feedback. You're getting people writing to you and telling you what they've gotten from your book. So first, let's start with the young people. What do they tell you?
Well, the most recent comment I got from a young person who was actually Essie Rose's age when she read my book. She read it, and she lives in New Orleans, so she communicated with me through my granddaughter, and she said, please tell your grandmother that if she ever writes a sequel, I'll be the first in line to read it. I think what it gives the younger people, because I think in the world that they're living in now, there's so much chaos and so much divisiveness and so much of a world that's not an easy world for children, that I think when they read Essie Rose's struggle, I think they make a connection, and they say that if she could do it, I could do it, because Essie Rose persevered. She mustered up her courage. So it's like, I can do it too. There's somebody that understands me, somebody that, that says I'm okay. And I think just because I think reading, no matter what book it is, it can be very therapeutic, a good book. And so I think that's what the younger people are saying. It inspires them. And I think it's almost like a roadmap for problem solving, because she did problem solve. She figured everything out, and she did it basically alone. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what children are telling me, how much, that they love the character, and that she did give them courage, and she inspired them and gave them hope. Because I think the problems that children are facing now are really not that different from the ones that she faced, because there's a lot of bullying in the world right now, a lot of anti-Semitism, A lot of children being raised in homes where both parents work. They don't get much time. I think anxiety is increasing in children. So in many ways, to put it in one word, I think it's a very healing book.
That's an amazing description, and I found it for me, very emotional. And that's what you wanted. You don't want it to be sort of simply an intellectual discussion. It's very emotional. And you said one 10-year-old reader said to you, if you write a sequel, I will be the first in line to buy it. A 10-year-old tells you that. And someone else said, I couldn't stop reading it. And the powerful characters and Essie Rose and Pearlie Mae and Moses. And then someone else said it belongs in every school. This book is a classic. Okay, now not only is it for young people, and you, of course, are a teacher and have been a teacher, so nobody could understand better than a teacher what would reach children's needs and minds, even in this day that you described so well, this time of divisiveness and people bullying people. But you also talk about older readers. What did it do for older readers?
The older readers seem to say that at some deep level, it connects them with their own childhood memories, and it brings them back to the forefront. One reader said, if I'd have had a Pearlie Mae, maybe I would have been a different person. But I think it brings back memories at a level that they probably hadn't even thought about for quite a while, of their childhood times, because I think children have struggles whether they live in the north, the south, the east, or the west. I mean, children do have problems, and they have to deal with losses, and they have to deal with not getting their way, and they have to deal with certain times. So I think that's what the older people seem to have said the most. It's very interesting because there was one story of an older woman who worked in our synagogue, and she read the book, and it was Shabbos. It was Friday night. And her husband came in for dinner, and he said, where's my dinner? And she said, you won't get any until I finish this book. But I do think there is so much emotion in the book because, and maybe I think they respond to the loss in the book because, by the time they live quite a while, I'm sure they've experienced losses in their life. And Pearlie Mae's death is a loss. And I always think that one loss triggers feelings for another loss. So I think that's the gratitude I feel when an older person reads it and they say, write another book. These characters spoke to me. They were so alive. And I think it even inspires them to be courageous. Because in some ways, I think older age and the problems of children, but they're backwards, but they're still the same in some ways.
We're still humans.
We're still human, right? And we still have so many human dilemmas, to figure out ways to handle them, and so many crises. And so I think, that's what the older people, and, many older people say it made me cry. It just touched me. It's interesting, as an aside, when my publisher decided to publish my book, that was the reason she decided to publish it, because she said it made me cry. It evoked so much emotion in me. And if a book does that, there's power in it.
What's the name of your publisher?
It's Golden Alley Press, and it's in Lidditz, Pennsylvania.
Very nice people who saw the beauty in your book and wanted to publish it. What do you think you were trying to achieve by doing this? I mean, this was something you took on at this point in your life. What were you trying to achieve, do you think?
Well, to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I had this great need to make meaning out of my childhood because it was such a troubling childhood. And I wanted to find a way to do it that was creative, in a way that may not only help myself, but help other children. And I've always loved words, and I've always loved to write. So I thought, well, maybe a book is my way to make this happen. So that was one. And when I decided to write a book, I wanted to write a book that was truthful, that was honest, that was very well researched, because I wanted it to be the most perfect book I could have, even in terms of how it was crafted. I think I met those goals. The other reason I wrote it was to pay tribute to not only my Pearly May, but to, I think, all of the Black people, the African Americans who, in my childhood, whom I witnessed day after day, their hardships and their struggles and their dignities and their beauty and their strength. And I think the other reason was because I love children, and this was my gift to children everywhere. My legacy, I hope. So I think those are what kept me going. Those in terms of the days when writing was difficult and I couldn't make anything happen. Those were the values and the goals that kept me sitting at the computer day after day after day.
That's wonderful. That's, you gave your heart and your soul and your talents. And a teacher, should there never be a teacher who does not love children, right? And you were that teacher, weren't you?
I hope so. And I agree with you.
Yes.
That's a prerequisite for being a teacher.
Right. I too have been a teacher all of my life. And I also love to bring out what was inside of children, what was going on in their lives, what was inside of them, what were they struggling with, what was making them udgy, and it's important because the key word is to understand.
Right, and to listen.
Yes, the key word is understand. And so, yes, so we're on the same page with that. Are you thinking of doing another book now? What are you thinking of?
Well, I'm in the process of writing a picture book that is in the hands now of an illustrator. So that is in the works. It is a very, very different genre. It is a picture book, a very imaginative one, I hope. It's the story of an imaginary character, which in itself is a very different approach. And it's about letting go, which I think even children have to deal with, letting go. It's about letting go of his real friend because his real friend is moving on. So he paints a picture of how to do that and how to make memories so that we can turn loss into beautiful memories. So that's in the works. And then I am in the process of contemplating writing a sequel to Essie Rose's Revelation Summer. I never wanted to, but I have so many requests from my fans to do it that my publisher is actually visiting me at the end of the month, Joan, and we're going to brainstorm to see if we can make that happen. So it's in the back of my head, and I'll just see what happens, what turns up. So I have a lot of writing ahead of me.
Well, Deanie Yasner, you are an amazing woman. You are doing something that we need. You're contributing to our community and our society in so many ways. And it's all coming from inside of you. And this is what is so important about your work and why it is that schools should certainly, don't you think schools should have this book?
I think every school should have it. I mean, I think every synagogue, I think every school, I know it's in a school now in Israel. I think every school, because I think it has so much to offer. And on another level, I think it has something to offer for children, because I think it's also a book about writing, because Essie Rose's writing was so creative. She used poems and she used words and she used games and she used all these writing exercises. So I think even on a level a teaching level, it would encourage kids on how to learn to actually write, because she did it in such a creative way. Because in the book she had poems, she had jingles, she had lists, so many different ways to write. And if a child wants to write a journal, I think this could be a model for how to write a journal, and how to, put down their own thoughts about their own lives through a daily journal. So I think even at that level, it's valuable for teachers.
Mm. And you also, aren't you available to come and speak at schools to classes if people want to?
Yes, and I would Zoom meetings and go to schools, Zoom, whatever, depending on the virus, of course, whatever works for them, I'm totally available. And I don't charge for the Zoom meetings at all. That's just a gift that I give to the kids and the teachers.
It's wonderful. I'm so happy that you came on my TV show.
Oh,
and
I'm ecstatic. I thank you so much. It's just a wonderful experience. I would like to close when it's the proper time with, I think, which is the real essence of my book, which is Pearlie May's Half Dozen Words of Wisdom. Because I think if we all heed these half dozen words of wisdom, the world would be better, not only for children, but for people of all ages.
Can you give us a few of those words?
Pearlie May's Half Dozen Words of Wisdom. Number 1, don't fret. Number 2, be kind. That's a big one. Number 3, practice patience. We all need to do that. Number 4, don't let wrongs fester. We do need different ways to handle anger in the society right now. Mind your mouth and shore up your courage to do the right thing. And I think some of those are sorely lacking in today's world, and we need to revive them to make a better world. So she was a very wise woman, Pearlie May.
Yes, she was. And so are you, the author, who
Thank
put
you
her
so
in the
much.
book.
Thank you so much. The book has really taught me a lot about myself, because I've had my own revelations from writing this book.
Yes, that works for a writer. Yes, that's
Yes.
true.
So
Yes.
I've had really beautiful revelations, and the journey itself has been a privilege, because I think I've said this to you, sometimes a book is more than a book. It takes you to different places. It takes you to meeting different people. It just takes you to a world that you never imagined had you not written a book.
Well, Deanie Yasner, thank you so much for coming on board to Backstory with Joan Goldstein. I hope we do another show when you write something new or you have something more that you want to share. You will always, always be welcome on Backstory.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deanie. Goodbye.
Goodbye.